What is going on, 12s, and welcome back to another episode of the Always Compete Seahawks podcast. My name is Sam. Thank you for joining me today. Today, I will have the preview of the highly anticipated Seahawks Rams game. I don't think it's a stretch to call this perhaps the most anticipated game in probably since, Seahawks Broncos when Russ first got there in 2022. Like, this is how long we've waited for a game that felt really important. And obviously, a lot of people weren't expecting the Seahawks to be good for that Seahawks Broncos game, but at the same time, it was the whole Russ storyline. But regardless, this feels like the first game that actually has like serious, major implications for the Seahawks, where like this feels like a big time game, a big time test for a team that I think still has some doubters across the league. I'm ready to break it all down. This week for the breakdown, ended up going for a little bit of a different strategy. In the last week for the preview, I feel like I said some good things, kind of watching it, I wasn't super happy with how I voiced some of my opinions. So I ended up going through and kind of doing a little bit more research. I ended up coming away with key storylines that I will break down coming up next. Seahawks advantages that I could find, Rams clear advantages that I could find, and then I have advantages for both teams where we're going to be breaking down kind of maybe shared advantages where both teams match up well. Let's get right into it. Let's start with some big storylines here. The key storyline for me that I can't help but think about is the winner the best team in the NFC or even the NFL? I think the winner of this game has a clear stake to say who else is better than us? The Rams and the Seahawks are the two teams that have spent the most time in the lead in the NFL. They are the only two teams that have a top five scoring offense and defense. They are the only two teams with perhaps the best wide receivers in football. They are the only two, or not the only two teams, but they are two teams with MVP quarterbacks. They are two teams with elite play calling head coaches, elite play calling coordinators. Like, is there any other team that can even match up to them considering what they have and what they've shown this year? I don't know. So I think the winner has a really valid case to say, hey, listen, like everybody out of our way, we are the team to beat. It's going to be interesting to see how that storyline comes in and how the Seahawks deal with it, considering, hey, they have not really dealt with that kind of pressure in a while. So going to be interesting to see how that works out. Another storyline I have, the two best play callers on their sides of the football are going at it. Sean McVay and Mike Macdonald. These are both head coaches. And yeah, I went out there and I just said it. I think McVay is the best offensive play calling coach in the NFL. And I think Mike Macdonald is the best defensive play calling head coach in the NFL. They are going head to head. Last year, Macdonald beat McVay in that first time, not literally, but any Seahawks fans that literally looked at the charts and looked at the game knew that Mike Macdonald out-schemed Sean McVay in that game, and it was really the Seahawks turning the ball over that gave that game away. Like the Geno Smith pick six. Just the Seahawks could not get out of their own way, but the Rams had like 9 3-and-outs in that game or some ridiculous number. Really should have won that football game. But Sean McVay got him in the second matchup in that game where the Rams were playing backups and they were still driving all over the Seahawks defense. It's going to be interesting to see how matchup number 3 works out in Los Angeles. And alongside the two head coaches, I also have the two star coordinators facing off as well. Clint Kubiak for the Seahawks. I think any Seahawks fan would see that after the Dable firing. Clint Kubiak seems like the favorite of most Giants fans. And Chris Shula, the defensive coordinator for the Rams, who has done a really, really good job with a young defense that doesn't really have a lot of star power. It's more so they are just really solid on every front. They are very hard to stop. They're very young, and they're just very explosive, and they make a lot of plays. And then the other thing I have, the two top receivers in the NFL are facing off. Puka Nacua was the best receiver in the NFL before he got hurt, like yards-wise. Then since then, JSN now has that by like 200 yards or something. So it's going to be interesting to see how these receivers face off and how they match up against their respective opponents. Let's get into the Seahawks advantages for this ball game. I have 3 clear advantages, like things that I found that are like, okay, this is a thing that Seattle can kind of work to exploit. I have Jackson Smith and Jigba versus the Rams corners. Now, the Rams are a good defense and they're a good pass defense, but they're more so a good pass defense via scheme and not via star power. Like a while ago, they had Jalen Ramsey and all these superstars, Aaron Donald, and that's how they would shut you down. Now they're more so scheme based. Everybody's just really solid and they get the job done. But if you look at the names of these corners, Darius Williams, Emmanuel Forbes, Ahkello Witherspoon, none of them have really been liabilities this year. But with that being said, I don't think we've seen any corner really match up well with Jackson Smith and Jigba all year. Derek Stingley, JSN gave him the work in that Texans game. I think we're just seeing it in every game. Jackson Smith and Jigba is taking everybody's chain, so I would not, doubt that he can match up against an older Darius Williams or an older Ahkello Witherspoon or Emmanuel Forbes, who most people considered a bust and is now maybe having a little bit of a career comeback here. All are solid, but how do they match up against Jackson Smith and Jigba, and how do the Rams ultimately game plan around that to stop JSN, who has just been a force of nature this year so far? Another clear strength they had for the Seahawks was Matt Stafford's lack of mobility versus the pass rush. So this is an interesting one. Matt Stafford is amongst the lowest sacked quarterbacks in the NFL by sack percentage. He's only sacked about 4% of the time. I believe that was fourth in the league. Sam Darnold was actually ahead of him. I believe he was number 2. But regardless, Matt Stafford does not get sacked a lot. That is more so because he gets the ball out really early, and Sean McVay is very good at scheming up how to get the ball out of Matt Stafford's hands quickly and get his playmakers out in space. But routinely, we have seen the Seahawks defense really eat up against quarterbacks. They are getting a lot of pressure very consistently. And consistently, we've also seen them get beat by mobile quarterbacks. However, Matt Stafford might be the least mobile quarterback in football at this point in his career. So that being said, if Mike McDonald can get blitzes drawn up and get quick, immediate pressure, Matt Stafford is going to have a tough time escaping. Now, once again, he can make plays, and they're very good at scheming out of it. So that's going to be an interesting chess battle because they definitely don't want Matt Stafford under pressure in this game. I think that is an advantage for the Seahawks at the end of the day with how they've been pass rushing, but it is worth noting that I think the Rams have been able to counter that well, and we'll see the chess match there between McVay and McDonald to see who beats them. Another advantage, and this is kind of a sneaky one, kicking. The Rams have been very poor at kicking this year. They actually replaced their kicker, who is Josh Carty, who actually was pretty good for them for a few years. He has been replaced, and they have missed a lot of field goals, a lot of PATs in a game that could be super close with both teams throwing haymakers over and over and over. A missed PAT, a missed field goal could sway the entire game. That is going to be important to watch. And I think it's an interesting note there. The Seahawks do hold the clear kicking advantage at the end of the day. Now, as far as disadvantages for the Seahawks, 2 clear things that I found. The Rams' turnover margin compared to the Seahawks' turnover margin is concerning. This is the only true major disadvantage that I could find for the Seahawks, as far as things that can truthfully lose you the football game. Seattle has been able to get away with their turnovers in the last 3 or 4 weeks because they've been up by so much. That being said, that's not going to be able to happen this time. You can't turn the ball over in this football game. You can afford a turnover once, but if you look at these average turnover margins, the Rams are plus 0.8 and the Seahawks are minus 0.4. So that's, if you combine those, that's setting up for the Rams to really be feasting. And that's concerning. This is a team that they will make you pay. And this is a lethal offense, and you can't turn the ball over. They try really hard for turnovers, and they're very good at not turning the ball over on offense and forcing them on defense. That is a major disadvantage for the Seahawks, in my opinion, and that's ultimately going to play into my pick. Maybe an ominous foreshadowing there. This is a huge thing that can sway a game. And like I said, when we saw it last year when they played the Rams, the Seahawks clearly outplayed the Rams on all 3 phases. And then it's the absolutely lethal mistakes that just kill you. And, we saw it last year, and it lost them that football game. And if they win that football game, they're in the playoffs. They lost it because of turnovers, and they missed it. So at the end of the day, that is a huge concern for me as far as this game. And can the Seahawks just stop with the silly turnovers and the stupid turnovers and just play a sound football game and hopefully try to take this game away? The other thing I found, McVay is an expert at using tight ends. They are run very consistent, 13 personnel, where, they have Colby Parkinson, Terrence Ferguson, and Tyler Higbee all out there at the same time, and they all kind of, can block, but they also can run routes. And McVay is very good at getting tight ends open and incorporating them in the offense. I think it's going to be interesting to see how Seattle matches up with that, considering consistently this year they have struggled covering tight ends. So, I think we really saw Trey McBride eat against them. We've seen tight ends just have their way. Dalton Schultz had a big game against us. Cade Otton had a big game against us. Jake Tonjes had that game against us. The Seahawks have had trouble stopping tight ends all year. I don't think that you can allow that to happen with Sean McVay and Matt Stafford, who are so good at utilizing the tight ends in this offense and getting them open and allowing them to make plays. So that is a definite concern for me. Those are the only two major disadvantages I could find. Now onto the shared strengths. These are kind of yin and yang here. Both teams' rush defenses versus both teams' rush offenses. Both teams are top 10 in rush yards per game allowed on defense, and they are both kind of touching 20, I think like 18 and 19 as far as rush yards per game. So both these offenses are not necessarily elite at running the football. Kyron Williams is a good running back, but he's not the running back I think that's going to be like a Derrick Henry or a Saquon or a Christian McCaffrey who can take over a football game. If the O-line isn't getting holes, he's not really going to be able to run the football. So it's something to watch. Both these teams have been very great in the run game on defense. I expect this to be a game where both teams are going to have trouble running the football. We've seen the Seahawks have trouble running the football all year, and the Rams are in a pretty similar boat. Pass offense versus pass defense, though, both teams also succeed. Now, there is a little bit of a disclaimer with this one. Both teams are top 6 in passing yards per game and are both low teens in passing yards per game allowed. This does come with a disclaimer that it's worth stating that because these two teams are in the lead the most of any team in the NFL, teams are going to be passing, especially when they're down by a lot. So that would explain the passing yards per game on defense, because I think the eye test for both of these teams have been pretty good. So take this one with a little bit of a grain of salt. I'm just literally talking numbers here. I don't think that either of these teams have a bad pass defense. I don't think either of these pass defenses are going to be like something that's going to get wildly exposed in some way. I just think that ultimately, that's just what it's going to come down to. And those are what the numbers are. But I would not necessarily look at this and be like, oh, the Rams have a bad pass defense, but the Seahawks also have a bad pass defense. I think they're both pretty good. And it's just really the sheer volume that teams are having to throw against them that is leading to this kind of weird, visual versus numerical difference. As far as injuries go, the Seahawks are dealing with a few, but it looks like they might be getting some back. Ernest Jones, Josh Jobe, and Torrey Horton all practiced today in limited capacity. And Mike McDonald said that they are optimistic on all three and their chances to play. Ernest Jones specifically posted a picture of him, posted a GIF of the guy being revived as if to say, hey guys, I'm back. I'm come back from the dead. That being said, he did take it down. However, most people are taking that to mean that they think he's not going to play. I don't think that's what that is. I would probably say that the coaches told him to take that down because they don't want the Rams knowing for sure that Ernest Jones is going to play and being able to game plan for him. So I do think Ernest Jones will end up playing. Josh Jobe is still in concussion protocol, but the fact that he's working his way back, I have a good feeling that he will play. And Torrey Horton is back practicing. I have a gut feeling that he will play as well. Looks like the Seahawks will be healthier than they were last week for sure. But however, it does look like Jalen Sandell is out. However, though, Seahawks fans, if you guys know, Olu Oluwatimi played a really solid game of football for us. And hopefully he can continue that against the Rams. The Rams are really dealing with only one injury. It's Davante Adams, who is dealing with a back injury, oblique injury, kind of came up last week. The Rams have been extremely healthy, which I find unique for how old, especially their offense is with, Matt Stafford and Davante Adams and Kyron Williams and some of their offensive linemen and Tyler Higbee. They've all been very, very healthy. Davante Adams, Sean McVay is absolutely positive that he's going to play, even though he did not practice today. So, we'll probably buy what Sean McVay is going to say. I imagine Davante Adams will end up playing this week against the Seahawks. So no real major injury concerns on either side for these teams. As far as picking this game, this is going to be tough. The ultimate takeaway that I wrote here is these teams are extremely good, top 10 in majority of categories in the NFL. They're in the lead the most. I think this is gonna be a Goliath versus a Goliath game. The good news, I don't think this is a game where the Seahawks are gonna be played off the field. And I think regardless of how this game goes, I think a lot of people are gonna leave saying, man, the Seahawks are freaking good. Seahawks can play ball. Seahawks are gonna be able to fight. Seahawks are a tough defense. The Rams have been scoring on everybody, and Seahawks gave them some pause. Unfortunately, I think turnovers are a massive storyline in this game, and turnovers can sway an entire football game. And I can just envision Sam Darnold losing the ball in the pocket, or a ball getting tipped that flutters up in the air and is picked off. I've seen it all year, and it looks like the turnovers might actually turn and rear their ugly heads when you're in a very close competitive football game, which we have not been in the last few weeks because we've been up by so much. So with that being said, I think the Seahawks are going to lose this football game. I have the score being 28-24 Rams. I think this is going to be a highly competitive football game. I think this is going to be a game where both teams are going to be going at it the whole time. There's not going to be a clear moment where either team pulls away in any clear way. But I think there's going to be a moment in this game where we're going to look back and say, man, without that turnover, we probably win this football game. And the turnover battle is a huge thing. The Seahawks have been very lucky with how they've come out with turnovers in the last few weeks. And I think this week is going to be the week that it gets them. So that's my takeaway. I think the Seahawks will absolutely hold their own. They will gain a lot of respect for how they play, but there's going to be a play in this game that sways it towards the Rams. And I'm not happy with saying that. I hope I'm wrong, but that's just how I feel. And I feel like I can see it coming. So I'm going to go with my gut. I'm going to go with what I actually believe. I'm not going to be super biased and say, hey, regardless of this, the Seahawks have a great offense, so go JSN and we're going to win. I just don't see that happening. Unfortunately, we'll have to wait and see. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you for watching. I just want to say a quick thank you for all of the support I've been getting since I've come back and been dropping videos. I was a little nervous when I came back after being gone for so long that you guys, maybe weren't going to be interested or tune in. You guys have been tuning in a ton. Thank you so much. The support is greatly appreciated. If you enjoyed, please leave a like, subscribe, comment. I do respond to your comments with any thoughts or opinions on these games or my takes. So please leave a comment if you have any extra thoughts that you might want to add. I hope you all enjoyed. I will see you guys after the Rams game. Good luck to us all, and I hope you guys enjoy your weekend. I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.